Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension Season 3, harmonizing light and shadow to embody your mystical power and purpose. I'm your host, Washayla Sananda, and today I get to introduce you to Dr. Tera Maxwell. Welcome, Tera.
Thank you, Washayla. I'm really excited to share with you guys today and have this conversation.
Yeah, I am too. So before we begin, I'll share a little bit about your history and your background so that everybody understands what you've been up to in the world. Dr. Tera Maxwell helps the impact-driven entrepreneur create freedom in life and business. She is the founder of the Affluence Codes, the QuantumX Method for healing and conscious reality creation, and trainer of QuantumX practitioners. Her scholarly work on intergenerational memories, particularly for children of immigrants, led her to develop her expertise in breaking free from ancestral and childhood patterns. Tera leads retreats in Costa Rica, where she and her three children live a life of freedom and surfing every day, which sounds amazing. And I love Costa Rica. It's so beautiful. So what a blessing and a life of, really expansion and freedom. It's wonderful that you were able to create that for yourself. I would love to start with kind of jumping in with your origin story and a little bit of background. I'd love to hear about the intergenerational studies that you did, as well as what led you to open into the world of spirituality.
So I've had a spiritual practice. I had a spiritual practice for many, many years, and at the same time, when I was working on my scholarly research, it was on intergenerational trauma, on colonial trauma, and how we heal from that. And so I was one of those that I was not open to the things beyond the unseen. If there were double-blind studies, if we could prove it, if there was evidence. And I actually grew up in Northern California, so I think I was just kind of like anything that was sort of like new age or woo-woo, I was not into. And during the process of working on my dissertation, I had a writer's block. And also postpartum depression, because I had 3 babies during that time. Mm-hmm. And I had this sort of light bulb moment that maybe just the way I felt like crap. I was just running on fumes. My body, I think I was drinking like 6 Diet Pepsis a day. I'm just crazy. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just not being a mom like the way that I feel. Maybe there's another solution. And I remember, and then with this postpartum depression, I was the kind of person that Western medicine doctors said that I needed to take antidepressants my whole life. Because there's a whole other story in my teens and 20s that I had chronic depression with suicidal tendencies. And, but it didn't make sense to, if you're nursing, to take an antidepressant. And so I just Googled alternative cure to depression, and it introduced me to emotional freedom technique. And I just, I downloaded, did this tapping, and I felt immediate results. And I ended up working with a therapist. So she had the graduate degrees, and she was working in this energy, working with emotional freedom technique. And I started to there was this one time we were working on some mother issues. And I remember how, like, as we were talking and we're doing this tapping, all of a sudden the lights dimmed. And she said to me, oh, we're going deep. And I started to make the connection that there was something beyond, like the words and like our ancestors. And so it started to open me up, because there were double-blind studies, and there was a lot of evidence in seeing how, and then of course I experienced it in my own life. And then that was just like the first kind of the first step. This was like years ago. And in my scholarly research, I ended up, the reason I had a writer's block is I was creating this, what I called an alternative archive of American empire. Like actually that kind of the history that we don't really see in history, that we don't read about in history books of US colonialism and its impact on later generations. My mother's from the Philippines, and what I ended up finding, like being visited by ancestors and all these different forms and practices of knowledge that the West, if you look at academia, like knowledge is double-blind studies. If there's evidence, and it's kind of like in this box. And so I had this writer's block that, wow, I can't share this. Like this is a tier 1 research institution, and I won't pass. And so through a friend did some energy work over the phone, which I was like, I had no, I was skeptical, but I was like, I had nothing to lose. And I felt some immediate shifts. And so I ended up studying energy healing. And so during the process of getting my PhD, just the world started opening up and connecting to ancestors and yeah, the energy work and my intuition. And so that was a path. And then after I finished my PhD, I went on the job market because I believed one of the things that I found at the same time as I was learning and honing my skills with energy work is that I remember reading Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And the sort of light bulb went off where I realized that because he talks about like the most successful, like at the time, like the 1920s, 1930s, the most successful, wealthiest men and women, they all had these patterns of success. And I was kind of raised where, you either were born with genius or not. You were either born with wealth or not. You're either like Olympic athlete or not. And so it shifted my framing, understanding that every single human being has access if we follow these universal laws and universal principles. And with energy work, by getting in alignment with your desire, and not just any desire, your soul aligned desire, and clearing the distortions in your field and limiting beliefs and ancestral patterns, you can sort of hack the system by getting it in alignment. And so it can happen faster. And so that spurred me to develop the QuantumX method on supporting, well, first in my own life, and then with the clients that I serve, and quickly being able to determine what are those distortions, what are those limiting beliefs and patterns, and clearing them, and a system to get in alignment so that you materialize into physical reality. And I'm kind of back. So after I finished I was on the job market, but I when I got my first rejection notice, I just remember feeling relief. And I remember reading Martha Beck, Follow Your North Star at the time. And I realized that the reason I wanted to be a professor was because, it was something like my father would approve of. And this field was kind of pagan, like, on the fringe, and to talk about his daughter. And so that was really from ego. And that just, after that rejection notice, I was just like, okay, I'm doing this. And from that point on, I built my company, and probably a year and a half to 2 years later, moved to Costa Rica.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. It's so interesting how, with all of these conversations, it seems like there is a moment, like an impactful moment, that oftentimes is sort of a dark night of the soul. I know I also had postpartum depression with my firstborn, and I was living in Hawaii. I was, far away from family and old friends. And it was such a dark, difficult place to be and to try and take care of a child. So I can really relate to that, and how from that you made new choices and decisions. And I love that a therapist actually helped you open to the world of the unseen or the quantum. And I would also love to hear
Yes.
more more about the affluence codes that you created. Tell us about affluence codes. What does that mean? Can you unpack the meaning in that?
Sure. So the affluence, I define affluence as inner freedom. And so the world is kind of distorted affluence. Often we think of like the Hamptons and yachts and excess luxury. And affluence is inner freedom, and it's the ability to create, to consciously create our soul aligned desires, and to have access to the resources, and to be able to do that. And so I had channeled the affluence codes years ago, but it was just kind of like the little bits and pieces of it. And I kind of backtrack is a story is that when I moved to Costa Rica, originally I just thought, the energy here is, I'll just say pure. You don't have all these, just the heaviness that you have in the US. And there's just so much nature. So there's so much connection to Gaia, and it was so supportive. And when I got here, I thought like, oh, I'm just, raise our kids, serve my clients, and, just have a good life. And I was told by my guides, like, no, that's not why you're here. It was really to support. It's like being here, I'm plugged in. It's just like the energy here is so strong, and I'm better able to share those frequencies with others. And when I moved to Costa Rica, layer upon layer came off, and just awakening after awakening, and letting go of the ego, and just really in the working with sacred plant medicine, and so this was really the place, like I know we're talking about Ascension, that was like the school. Gaia's school for me was here in Costa Rica. And a couple years ago, I went to Peru to work with ayahuasca and this plant medicine called the Tree of Light. And it's one of the first, the Shipibo tradition say it's one of the first tree that was ever built, created by the universe. And it goes into every cell of your body so you could hold more frequency. And during that time, it was very intense few weeks, and working with a very special diet to prepare for this sacred plant. I received during multiple ceremonies the affluence codes in all, like the full like energy transmission, where like my whole body was vibrating, and different frequencies. And what I was shown is that as we're shifting, we're in this place of transition and shifting to a new earth. And I was shown in a vision how, there's this balance between light and darkness. And on earth, there became a time when the darkness was kind of taking over the light. And yet there's nothing to fear or to worry. All that is required to shift the balance is for a number of us to fully come online, to fully remember who we are as divine beings, and to co-create and to choose another reality. It's almost, imagine like when you think about computers, because we are very sophisticated divine operating systems. And when we come online and we all choose at the same time, and I'm not even talking, it's actually a very small percentage of the entire human population that we choose, and we're embodying our higher selves, and that's what it takes to shift the planet. And so these affluence codes are activating these dormant codes that you already have in your system, and to support you in this process of ascension. And it means living, breathing, talking, like thinking, and embodying, like in this vessel, your higher self. And so there's different codes, such as like the code of surrender, and freedom, and divine presence, and certainty. Like when we're living in the frequency of certainty and of knowing, And so of course, like you can see, we're looking around. If we look across the globe, there's so much uncertainty, but can you be in this frequency of certainty, even in the unknown, because we get to choose. And so as I downloaded these codes, I did not know I was entrusted to be the custodian of these codes. And I was like, my ego was just like taken down, because over the next several months, like my body could, it took a while for my body to catch up. I mean, I was fried and in bed for many weeks on end. And then of course the process of letting go of ego attachment to be aligned with these codes, so that I could share them with others. And what happens as you integrate and embody these frequencies, you end up, this process of living from our heart, of remembering who we are as conscious creators, of creating, because there's so many leaders and entrepreneurs. We have, this is something I also, that my guides gave me, is deactivating these bondage codes. And these bondage codes, or if you want to call it the slave grid, that keeps us anchored in the 3D matrix, where most of humanity, they're enslaved and asleep. And so there's some very subtle codes. For instance, the bondage code of working hard. Like many of us, and me included, straight A student, high achiever, except when I wasn't, and I'd self-sabotage because it was like one side or the other. We get rewarded for being high achievers. Maybe you get bonuses or you get more money, and everyone's like, yeah, you're successful. But you're still a slave. You're still a slave in the system. And so I teach my clients, it's creating from a place of flow, from a place of ease, because as we're creating a 5D business, what has worked in 3D, it's not working anymore. Especially if you are a mission soul, if you are a light leader, and you were here to support and facilitate this great shift. The way we've been attached our identity to making, whether it's 6 figures or 7 figures, like that's still an egoic attachment. Like all of these things, all these distortions have got to be dissolved and transmuted for we to hold the frequencies that are aligned with the new earth.
Yeah, that's really powerful. As I'm listening to you talk, I can really relate to your journey, where I had a similar experience of receiving, I call them Ascension Codes. I wrote a book about it, and a lot of the same process. And ultimately, it's all about opening the heart and connecting and embodying more presence. And it really amazes me how so many people have received similar information in their own unique way. And it is, evidence that the divine is really bringing this information through for this transformative time, for the new earth transformation. So, and all with our unique ways of delivering. So I really appreciate what you're sharing, and I feel it. And I'm also really interested.
It's such an exciting time, and we all have such unique codes. Yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
No, please.
Okay, I know there's a little delay because of there's a little storm where you are. So sometimes I'll I know we're having a little bit of choppiness, but it's okay. It's all divine perfection somehow. Yes. But I wanted to dig in a little bit more to, you're talking about the slave codes, the bondage of this matrix. And that's really what ultimately we're working at as a community or globally to ascend, if you want to use that word, out of the bondage matrix of this world. And I also know the other day when we spoke about some of these things, you had a philosophy around the masks and the meaning behind that. Would you unpack your philosophy on what's going on for us?
Yeah, well, first, when you're I'll share with you another bondage code that's really relevant right now. And it's the bondage code of righteousness, of being right. And we see wars, we see wars, and it's happened for across generations and eons, but it's really coming to the forefront in this polarization. And then we see it in this conversation around masks, so people are actually wearing this insignia. And what I found is that I remember, like, early on, I personally was triggered, because I would, I just have such a deep belief, like, to feeling to support others and myself as we awaken, and to see so many people like just complying and not questioning. And the thing is that for us to transcend, that we get to come from a place of neutrality and a place of love and compassion. So for me, like, anytime we have a trigger, it's an opportunity for us to transmute. And I was triggered early on, and I have 3 children who are more evolved, and they would be like, "Mom, we have a beautiful life. Why are we even talking about this?" And so I started to see it as resistance training, kind of like, when you're working out, you're working out with a trainer or something, and you're building muscle. And so every time I saw or interacted with someone that had a different point of view or was wearing a mask, I noticed the trigger and kind of even trace it back, which was actually across other lifetimes, kind of that urgency. And just, if you've had other experiences where maybe there was persecution or whole planets were destroyed because people did not choose to awaken. So yeah, there's some imprints from this. And as I transmuted those and was able to just have forgiveness for myself, forgiveness for others, but mostly for my others, with compassion. And that's our invitation. So every time, whether it's with the masks or in other areas of your life, if you're able to get excited, because this is the lesson. And when you can view it neutrality and coming from that place of love, and not intellectual, like, oh yeah, peace and light. I mean, like, it's embodied. Like, you're really feeling it, not just bypassing it. Because what I just described is I really had to look at some stuff. I had to let go. Like, where is the part about being right? Can I let go of being right? Because being right, this bondage code, it keeps us still in the matrix. Whereas, like, another one is the bondage code of control. There's so many. We're seeing this across the global landscape. This control, where people are being controlled, but then also, where does it show up in our own life? Whether it's in business, in our team, in our relationships. I mean, there's layers and layers of unpacking that and just loving ourselves, so we don't have that need to control. I mean, this is the work, and so over this past year, it's almost like everything, like sort of this pressure cooker, where we're able to, like, just magnify and be able to look at things and to feel them and to transmute them, and through forgiveness and through love, and to look at all of it so that we can ultimately transcend. So that's the question. So kind of just be able to look at masks, for instance, as sort of your, like, if you get a quiz when you're in grade school, you got a quiz, and every day, if you see it, and if you're able to come just from the place of neutrality and not give it any necessarily energy, then you're like, okay, I'm good here, and then maybe it'll come up somewhere else, and then we get to transmute that, and that's how we get to do this together, to ultimately anchor in these higher frequencies and create a new earth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really interesting for me, also in, noticing with my coaching clients how, and friends, some people are triggered by the people wearing masks. Other people are triggered by people not wearing masks. And they both have very logical reasons, for feeling that way. And for me, standing in that place of neutrality and non-judgment of, okay, everyone has their reason. It depends on what they align with, what they're listening to in the world. And there's a question in here for you as you were speaking. So I was thinking about myself and my views on, the mask wearing and all of that. And for anybody who doesn't believe that masks are effective, or for anyone who believes that masks are actually sort of taking away of freedom, to then wear a mask in public, you're really then setting aside your resistance and just saying, okay, I'm just gonna surrender to what's required to make other people feel comfortable, even though I don't believe in it. I feel like that part makes total sense. But at what point does it become, um, instead of just being compliant and like going with what's required, like you're actually in bondage to the larger community? Like, how there's kind of a fine line there that I contemplate sometimes.
Yeah.
Just curious on your thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it's true, and that's why in the beginning I was like, I was very strong in. I mean, I just in our small community and taking a stand, and yet that there's still a charge around that. And the best, I I think that's an individual decision, and really, because there may be some of you might be watching right now, and it might be your divine guidance is to speak out about it, or maybe like it's completely aligned for you to be the one to be like, I'm never. I have a really good friend who's an expert in terms of health and the evolution of human consciousness, and it's like down to the cellular level, and he will not wear a mask. But then of course his wife does the errands. Like, because you can't even go to the post office if you don't wear a mask here in Costa Rica. And so, yeah, I think it's just everyone can make that decision. And the best use of our energy and our focus is asking our soul, like, what is the next step? What's the next soul aligned action? Because we can, for instance, if I wear it in the grocery store or whatever, if I'm focusing on my mission, and if you're focusing on your mission and what you need to do today, like that's the best use of our time and our energy. And eventually this will go away. Even, for instance, like with Facebook and social, I mean, there's so much negativity, and you could even like darkness across social media, and there's also just beauty and light, such as this beautiful event that you've created. And so what if this is something that one of my mentors has shared, to recode the internet. What if we just continue, like even on Facebook, just infuse it with light, and eventually we take over? Imagine a time where light prevails over darkness, and there's just so many pure-hearted, loving people, and these big giants such as Facebook end up awakening too.
Yes, I
Versus
love
just
that.
turning our back on it. I don't know. It's just that's a possibility. What are we dreaming about?
Yeah, I love that. That's a big part of my work, is recoding everything.
Yes.
And I also teach my clients that, because, it's like with the mask issue, with the vaccine issue, with the, just all of the global issues that come up, everything that gets us triggered can be recoded. I feel like the trigger is a prompt from our inner, from our
Mhm.
inner divine to take action in some way. It's not to lash out in anger. I mean, that's our humanness or our
Mhm.
ego. But when we become aware of
Mhm.
those triggers as prompts to take a positive action, then yes, bring in the recoding, bring in the higher vision. What would I like to be seeing and experiencing here? And then
Yeah.
that becomes the conscious life creation, right?
I'll share with you just a little side note. So I have this. It's funny because I had this. I know because there's a very galactic thread in your community in terms of ascension, and I had this vision of what if all of the star seeds, and maybe someone here is a creative and a designer, and will take this to the next level because this isn't my genius. But I'm like, what if we made these masks that are like galactic star seeds, like bejeweled masks with like crystals that like open up our channel, and so when we wear it, we can kind of see each other, and it's like we're reinterpolating the sign.
Yeah.
And so I was with some friends, and we were just playing and talking about it. And my a dear sister came to visit a couple weeks ago from LA, and we had to go into a boutique, and I didn't have my mask, and she had this, and so it's this
Jeweled.
cute little mask. But the thing is, you completely can breathe through it. I don't even know if it's not effective against it, well, my frequency is effective against any virus.
Right.
But the thing is, so when I wear this, I giggle and I feel joy. And then the people that it's important to them, I actually get all these compliments. So for them, I'm actually spreading love. They feel
Yeah.
safe, which actually, when you feel safe and you feel good, you're more protected against any virus versus if they're feeling anger and fear. So I'm supporting them. And so this is actually a way that's kind of to comply and actually not.
Right. I've seen a lot of
But
those
it started
types of things.
with a dream.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I
Well, I'm in Costa
totally.
Rica, so that this was really probably in LA.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, different places have their restrictions, but I love that philosophy that like what you said, I really want to hone in on your frequency. When it's high, you are not going to contract a disease, you're not going to be contagious. So you're not going to be a holder of a virus
Mhm.
when your frequency is high, when you're holding that higher level of awareness and you're spreading that, you're actually spreading antivirus, you're actually spreading immunity when, regardless of whether or
Yes.
not you're wearing a mask, you're holding a higher frequency. And I think that's what we're all in the ascension process going for, is raising our frequency. And and this isn't to say anything negative about anybody that's had the virus. Everybody has those moments, those down
Mm-mm.
times. So I'm not chastising or belittling anyone that's had it. I understand, and yet we can strive to raise our frequency, to spread joy, to spread light. Even, like, I love how
Mhm.
you found a mask that brings you joy, that makes you feel happy. And so to look for those ways to navigate the unusual territory.
So true. And the thing is that when people, I know there's been times when I've been ill, or I shared about, a couple of years ago where I was in bed, and it's not like a character defect, or, if we've had, something ailing the body, it was the greatest gift. So just like any trigger, we're able to take that opportunity and see, okay, what's the lesson here? And what is the gift? And what am I here to transmute? Because none of all of us have it, whether, something that we're working through. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then it really is in the the harmonizing of, it's the name of the show is harmonizing light and shadow to embody your mystical power and purpose. So harmonizing the dark stuff, the shadow stuff that's going on with our desire to hold a higher frequency, to bring joy and upliftment and more light, actually brings us into the experience of embodying our mystical power and purpose. And I think it's always, looking for ways, looking for tweaks and hacks and ways to get into that higher embodiment so that we can experience a more mystical, higher minded, more conscious life. So I'd love to hear from you, how do you do that? What are your tweaks or your hacks to embody your mystical power and purpose?
Oh, there's many. It's activating my soul frequency every day. And so just, when we breathe into our heart and set that intention to activate our soul frequency and to expand it. And I have these, actually, I'll share this with your audience. I have these affluence codes that originally, before I went to Peru, they sound just like their affirmations, mantras. And yet when I started working with them, I channeled them. There's more encoded in these words. And so when you say them, and you command every cell of your body, you create this recalibration. And so you get in sync so that your vessel is a receptive container for your higher self. And so if there's any time when I am feeling in a funk, or if there's sort of like that glitch, the glitch in, like in this 3D reality, it's like, okay, because often it's very multidimensional, paradise, like, when you're just feeling the flow and synchronicity, but it's not every single moment, and life can happen. And so when I see myself, observe myself showing up as my 3D human self, I will remind, and you just say, and you can, for all you that are watching right now, you can repeat after me. And it's important when you say it, really to say it from your sacral, from your pelvis. And as you breathe in, I am affluence now. I am abundance now. I am divine grace now. I am divine presence now. I am infinite compassion now. I am a conscious creator of my reality now. I am living in the flow now. And then whatever else comes up, but there's something about anchoring it in this now moment, and you setting the intention, because our bodies, there's 70% water, and you are recalibrating to this frequency, which is aligned with who you are as a divine being.
Yes, beautiful. And I can feel the frequency of those statements, and they are so powerful. I love that. Thank you for sharing those. Very beautiful. And yeah, and just the vibration of it, the frequency, I was like, oh yeah.
It feels good because it's who you are, right? It's who you are. We're like, oh yeah.
Yes. And it also points to how important it is to have a daily practice, whatever your daily practice is, but whether it's affirmation statements, meditation, conscious life visioning, to have a daily alignment practice, so that we can keep getting back to center. Do you have a certain routine or practice that you do on a daily basis to stay aligned?
I do. I meditate, I do yoga, I surf, I journal. I speak to I journal to my guides. And so often I will write down, like, what is the time? Because we get to choose our reality. We get to choose the timeline. And so I'll journal, like, what is the timeline that I'm choosing right now? And express it as that I'm grateful and all the feelings of living in this timeline now. And then I'll ask, like, is there anything else that I need to shift or focus on or let go of to be in alignment with this highest available timeline? Is there any, and so I'll just, for me, because I'm a writer, and I'm able to just, sometimes when you journal, I can tell the difference. It's a way to really to distinguish between what the ego says and what divine guidance or higher self or your angels, whatever spiritual vocabulary you have for that. Because when, the mind chatter, when the mind is speaking, it's circular. It's like, you should be doing this, and and he did this, and it's like all these stories, right? And when you can write it down, you can kind of just observe it. And when divine guidance speaks, it's very simple. You are so loved. You are so supported. Take this next step. Go here. They're usually very succinct sentences. There's not a lot of story. There's not. And so it's really powerful to separate. I love to share a practice that I do, because it's not just in the morning. It's the more we can, moment to moment, carry these frequencies with us, remembering who we are. So often I love to surf. I'm another dimension. I'm a mermaid, and so I'm just really connected to the ocean and the frequencies there. It's been a big part of my healing process. And so when I go out to there's this beautiful trail along the sand, and there are all these shrubs, and I'll be carrying my longboard. And so often when I'm taking a walk, and you can do this anywhere, but I with each step, I open my eyes and I choose to take that step in 5D. I choose to look at the twigs and the leaves around me, and I connect to Gaia, and I express my thanks for we have so much support from Mother Earth, all these frequencies, like, we're so loved, and everything, just to feel all the connection with everything here, and hearing the birds. And so it's just that conscious choice with each step, that because it's in our bodies, and with steering our mind, that we are aligning and anchoring in this 5D. So if we do this each step, each time we place our foot, and it's especially powerful when you go barefoot, because you're grounding into the earth. There's so many things that the Matrix does, like wearing shoes, and like all this stuff that, and we can go on and on. So many things that is designed to keep us disconnected, so that we continue to be enslaved. So if you take off your shoes and walk on the earth, it grounds you, and you connect to our mama.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I love that. I totally do that too. I do.
Yeah.
I call it trance walks or meditation walk, where I'm in, it doesn't matter what's going on around me. I'm in my own vision. And it's really beautiful. It's especially nice to do that at the ocean, under the sun, watching the sunset.
Yeah.
But anywhere.
Well, I'm really grateful that you've created this whole event and this vortex, this conversation, because every moment we're shifting realities based on the frequency we're in. So it's just like, we could go in the news, or you know someone in your family, or meet someone at the grocery store. They literally are living in a different world, and we get to choose. And so the more that we are staying at a high frequency and surrounding ourselves with others, and so what you're sharing, and calling all these beautiful leaders and speakers, and to share these frequencies, because yes, we already have within, but sometimes we forget because we also have our human self. And so the more we get bolstered up and it's like, oh yeah, this is who I am. Yeah, this feels good. This is who I am, until we can stabilize that frequency. And so that's what's so powerful about when we co-create together and we join and support one another.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you for sharing all of that wisdom with us. It's very helpful. Thank you so much. I've appreciated everything that you've shared with us today. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave the viewers with before we close?
We live in one of the most exciting times in history, and we get to be free. We get to be free. So thank you
Beautiful.
for having us, for having me, and this beautiful conversation.
I love it. We get to be free. That's a wonderful note to close on. Thank you so much, Dr. Tera. I really appreciate all of your wisdom. You've shared so many wonderful, just really juicy bits of work with us today. And I look forward to diving in more into more of your work. And thank you everyone for watching. And I appreciate you all. I love you all. And just know that you are not alone in this journey. We're all doing it together collaboratively, and you have the support you need. So have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are, and namaste.